going to go ahead and cover this one too. There is a PECS reinforcer worksheet that will help you as you come up with different reinforcers to use, because we will be talking about different levels of PECS here in a few minutes. But it helps you to determine whether or not the items that you're using for the child to request or initiate with are actually good items to have in your rotation. So I like this as a good data collection tool. So this is a good one, whether or not the child rejects it, has no reaction, reaches for the item within an arm's distance, tries to get it when it's out of reach, shows a sign of pleasure, different ideas there. So you can actually just write on that as well. Okay. All right, I think we have, how much time do we have?
15 minutes.
15 minutes? All right.
Are you handing this to me?
No, because I need to get stuff. Yeah, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, so one of the primary, let me tell you one more thing before I start. There's another thing in your handout, an interesting article that you maybe want to read later. Susan Wiley wrote an article that's in your stack called Red Flags. And it's about if you have a deaf or hard of hearing child that you're perhaps thinking, there could be something else going on here. Susan outlined some things that you can look for. Sensory differences, behavioral differences, sorry about that, or gross motor differences. So that's just another reference for you, not necessarily have to do with functional communication training, but I think a great resource for you. So picture exchange communication system, I know you guys have seen that system. Probably 90% of people who use it. How many of you have been to formal PECS training? Hey, okay, this is the point, right? There's like one person in this room who's actually been to formal PECS training. But how many of you utilize PECS in your classroom? Okay, several more, right? So we find that PECS is a good non-verbal way to replace behaviors. It's a form of functional communication training. We had conversation earlier about how total communication may not be the appropriate mode of communication with a child who avoids eye contact. Just like using strictly oral methods may not be the appropriate method of communication or mode of communication with a child who thinks auditory input is aversive. So PECS is one of the most popular ways to teach functional communication training. Here's what I need to say to you. PECS is moving down into the basement. Do you have to stay in the basement? No. PECS you can build upon. You teach function of communication. Once they understand that, then you can build upon that. So PECS can be, in many of your minds, you're probably thinking, well, my kid's beyond PECS, right? Not if you have holes in functions of communication. They may move through these first 3 phases of PECS very quickly. So many of our students do. Once they figure out how to communicate, it's going to go quickly. So we're going to show you some different things today about PECS. We also, this afternoon, have many different opportunities for you to sit and think, co-think with us about some visuals you could put in place.
So we're going to show you 2 ways. I'm going to show you traditional 2-on-1, and then I'm going to show you 1-on-1, in which you're going to be both the communication partner and the prompter, okay? And the reason why I'm going to do that is because it's not best practice. It's not what you're going to find. You're not going to be trained this way, but it is a way in which if you're the only one trying to get the student through these phases, we're going to have to work with what you can work with. Okay, so we're going to do prompting first, 2-on-1. and then we will move to the other. And I'm going to put this on so I can actually do this.
And I am the prompter right now, okay? So this is, you're starting an alternative behavior. We want Kristi to hand Stacy a picture of the pretzel rather than reaching, grabbing, spitting, throwing, you name the behavior.
So I actually have several things that I know Kristi likes because I've already done a preference assessment with her. I've already collected information. Kristi loves snacks, so I have candy, I have pretzels, I have chips. But I would never in my wildest dreams ever give her a full pretzel, right? Because I'm stingy. I'm gonna give her like a little tiny piece of a pretzel because I need at least 3 to 4 communicative exchanges with one pretzel for multiple reasons. Number one, I'm on a teacher's budget. I'm probably buying these on my own. Number two, I don't want her to get full during this process, right? I want her to stay very hungry. So when would I be doing this if she's an edible girl?
Right
Before lunch, okay? During that snack time when I know she's hungry. So I'm also going to be collecting data during this. Why? Because I want to know how successful she is. During PECS phase 1, the basic goal of this is to have Kristi independently pick up the picture icon and hand it to me in exchange for a piece of the pretzel. At this point, I don't care if this has a picture of a pretzel, if she knows that there's a picture of a pretzel on it. I don't care if she's reading it. I don't care what she's doing with it. The only thing I want, the only behavior I want is the initiation of her picking this up and handing it to me, okay? So I am her communication partner. She is the prompter. She says nothing. She is basically only prompting her to do that. As a communication person, I'm not going to put this picture probably right there. I'm probably going to put it right in the middle between us. But I am probably going to entice her a little bit. I'm definitely going to hold the items, the goods in front of her. I'm going to try to capture her attention in the process, because in the process she's probably going to reach for what? And then Kristi is going to definitely,
This is most to least, right?
and then, well, I'm going to verbalize. You guys are going to probably do something. I'm going to say pretzel. I want pretzel. And then I'm going to reinforce and reset back up. Okay? Now, what you guys do to modify this, talk to Kristi about right now.
Okay, right? So you're going to sign. If you are teaching in a total communication environment, you're going to sign what she just said, just like you would for anything that you were doing. You're going to sign it. If you're in an oral program or you think that this child has anything where, somebody mentioned it earlier, where expressive language mode is different than receptive language mode. We all agree that can happen. Everyone's nodding at me. Yes, absolutely. Expressive and receptive can be different. So if you have a child with fine motor delays who is not going to be able to be understood by various communication partners, you're going to use something other than sign with them. If you're going to use oral, then you're going to tie it to speech, but you're going to tie it to whatever mode of communication the team has decided on. We're cueing. Yes, thank you for that. Okay? All right. Okay. One person?
Yeah, let's do, I forgot to point out a few things. So I have the pretzel. I'm also doing an open hand cue to show her, even though I have this, she would definitely be prompting. I'm providing an open hand cue.
I'm on the wrong hand.
Yeah, as she is getting better at this, I would fade my open hand cue, right, over time. Yes.
So I'm hand over hand cueing her. So as she's reaching for the pretzel, what I do as the prompter is I take her hand and I use her hand and I grab that icon, and then I take her hand to Stacy's hand and I pry her little fingers open.
So this is an open hand cue. I'm putting it right in front of her. It's really big, okay? And I'm doing this initially, and I have this. This icon is on the table between us, and I apologize, this is not the best setup for you guys to see this. So I have this on the table, I have the open hand cue, she's doing the prompting. I'm the communication partner. She doesn't say a word, she doesn't sign, she doesn't do anything, she just prompts Kristi to pick up the picture. I will slowly pull the open hand cue back to me as she gets better, and then I fade the open hand cue until Kristi is picking this up independently and handing it to me, and then I open, and then I reinforce. So we are slowly fading any type of prompting that we're doing in this first part, because our total goal of this component is for her to initiate communication with us, okay? Appropriate communication, right? She's not picking something up and throwing it at me. So she's initiating. I'm also not gonna do 10 pretzels in a row. I know she likes Skittles, so I'm going to intersperse a different picture, which I had. Oh, they're on the floor. I have a picture of candy, I have a picture of chips, and I'm gonna have all of these materials right next to me, so I'm ready to go. I'm always packed and loaded. I can put it out there very quickly for her, but I am definitely pulling back any type of prompting that I'm doing during that time. Okay? So we want to do this trials. We want to do at least 10 trials at a time, masked. No less than 10. If your child is still responding, I would take it up to 20 trials in a row, because what we're doing is that repetition is helping the child to learn that process. Okay? Repetition in close proximity. It goes into the working memory. Now, one more thing before we break. Get into the working memory of a child with traditional autism. We're looking at 60 to 70 trials to get it into the working memory, okay? So look at a child with a dual sensory involvement. We're not quite sure what those trials, how many trials that's gonna take. Okay? So I'm gonna be honest with you, typically during phase 1 is when we tell you to choose your symbol system. With this population, we're gonna tell you not to choose your symbol system until phase 3. And
can you tell them what you mean by symbol system?
Yes. This is what I mean by symbol system. So by symbol system, it's basically what you're going to be communicating with. And sorry, I've got a lot of things up here that I'm trying not to fall over. So it's basically what you're going to use for your communication tools. Are you going to use the real object? Are you going to use a picture of the product? Are you going to use an icon? Or are you going to use a picture of the sign? Okay? So we might typically choose that in PECS in phase 1. But really, as Kristi and I have been looking at this, and Kristi's actually in the process of submitting a grant right now.
Today,
actually. Hopefully I'll go home and approve it later. It's in the hopper, I hear. To NIH. So we're hoping she'll get funding for this. There's another researcher that has actually published in using PECS with a student with a comorbid diagnosis of ASD and DHH as well, or deafness as well. But what we're going to do is we're looking at creating a system that once a child gets to discrimination phase, that's at the point in which we are going to begin to select the symbol system. Because as we said, does it matter if the child is looking at the symbol right now? No, it doesn't. Because right now we just want them to use a tool to initiate communication. We don't care if they're looking at the picture. And most of the time, if you're working with a child, you're going to notice that they're not really looking at the picture that's on the icon. They're actually looking at the object that they want during that exchange. A couple other things that we say is to look at symbol size. If you have a student with a visual impairment, if you have a student that has some physical capabilities, they have a problem picking things up, we've done things like raise the icons up. Okay, so we've stiffened the Velcro or the lamination, so it's a heavier lamination, so it's more durable. So we've done all kinds of things. We've actually put it on cardboard to raise it up so it's more durable, so it stands up off the table. So we've done all kinds of things to make the icon or the symbol something that a child can manage depending on the child's physical capabilities. And we also say make sure everything is available, ready to go, and to standardize your Velcro.
Tell them what that means.
Hard on hard, soft on soft is what I always do. So always put the hard side of the Velcro, and I know it's hook and loop, but I, for the life of me, have been working in this field for years and years, and I don't know which is hook and which is loop. Do you guys? Okay, good to know. Neither do you.
I think it's hard. I think the hook's the hard.
Hook is hard, and soft is, so I always put the hard on the hard surfaces, like the book or the wall, the table, and then I put the soft on the bendy, on the picture. So if you standardize everything, you'll be able to use it across your schedules, across your reinforcer menus, across your communication systems. Okay, so phase 2 is expanding spontaneity. And basically, you want the child to go to their communication book, pull off, this is the ultimate goal, pull off an icon and take it, traveling to their communication partner in exchange for a desired item. So we have left the table, right? And we're training to go to another location in exchange for that desired item. So one thing that I love about this is because you can have a child with a communication system and they're trying to communicate all day long and the teacher is across the room, right? Not very successful, is it, if I want to communicate with her and I'm stimming with my picture over here and not doing anything. So it's very important that that initiation during that component that we teach that child to travel to the communication partner to have that want and need met. Okay? So that's a real live thing that we need to do. So, in this,
See those? Oh, never mind. You're attached.
Nope.
Never mind.
Not, here you go.
So this is where, if you haven't been through formal PECS training, this is probably one of the times when people say, oh, I use PECS in my classroom, that this is the step they miss. This is a really important step, because if I can only communicate with somebody who's right in front of me, with holding the item that I want, then that is not natural communication, right? A student needs to understand that they can travel and they can get their needs met on their own. This is about initiation. Remember in phase 1, they learned that I can initiate to get something that I want. But now I can initiate to different people in different locations, right? This should sound just like generalization training, because it is. And this, if you're not formally trained in PECS, is something people often skip. They just put pictures in the environment and hope that kids pick up on it. But they've never specifically trained the distance component, which is really, really important. So step 2 seems like this random thing. It is, again, we've gone to the basement and now we're like on the landing. Okay, we had to go to the basement to teach how to initiate communication. But now we've moved up a level. Now we can travel and still get our needs met. And that can be with different communication partners.
I'm actually going to take you back.
Take me back.
I forgot to show you how we can prompt with just one person. So I'm going to do that very quickly before we move.
Yep.
And honestly, I've seen just a whole books put in classrooms where they said that they're doing PECS, and I've never even seen initiation taught. So I'm going to take you back to phase 1. So remember, there would probably be a wall where, if this is my communication student, behind her, right? And I might even have a wall over here because I need to use my environment to keep my student where I need my student to be. So I'm going to use a table that fits my student, and I can't express the importance of chairs that fit students as well, because if I've got a student where the feet are dangling and they're all over the place, the chances of the student staying in that chair are slim to none because the child is not grounded. So make sure that we've got everything that's fitting the student perfectly. I'm sorry, but the table is not about you. It's about the student, because if it doesn't fit the student, then we're in trouble. So what you're going to do, it does become a little bit harder, but it's doable. So I have my pretzel icon. Depending on if she's right-handed or left-handed, I'm going to have to switch it around. So right now you're going to be left-handed because that's the way we're set up. So she's right-handed, what side do I need to be on? Yeah. Okay? So I have my pretzel icon. I'm going to have to put it a little bit closer to me because I have to have a little bit better control over that environment, right? So I'm still going to probably have this here. I'm going to set it across the table, all right? So I still have control over that. It's going to be closer to me. Can everybody see where I have this? So here is my pretzel. My icon is in between the pretzel and I, but it's across the table from her. And remember, this table is going to be a little bit bigger, so she's still going to have to reach kind of across the icon and across me to get it. Okay? So as she's reaching, I'm going to go ahead and swoop down. I'm going to say, oh, pretzel, I want pretzel, and I'm going to hand that to her. It's a little bit harder to do, but it is doable if you're determined to do it. You just have to learn to manipulate to set up your environment for those trials. So everything has to be where you're kind of a little bit more on top of the student, and you have to have that pretzel where you're kind of under guard in process. So again, pretzel, I want pretzel. Only you're going to be signing in that situation.
So one-handed prompting is very difficult if you're doing this with a signing student. Why? Because one hand is catching their hand and grasping, and your other hand is supposed to be open to do that. So this is really hard, right? It's really almost impossible to do. So once you once you get their hand there, then you kind of have to one-handed sign, pause, sign, oh, you want that, or whatever, your pretzel. You're going to sign that while you're handing her the thing. My suggestion is, for this population, if you are signing with deaf kids, if in any way possible, use two. Because your hands are already so busy. They're your communication, right? But it's going to be much more difficult for you to be, Your hands can't be in 3 places at once. You can do it, you just have to plan. And let me tell you what, practice it with your aides. Practice it with typically developing kids, with your own children at home, before you ever try to implement this in the classroom, because you're going to get tangled in yourself.
And pause.
And add those meaningful pauses in that exchange, because otherwise you're going to stumble on yourself.
So then if you're working with, like, say you have an interpreter in your room, could you make the interpreter be the communication person and then transfer it to yourself later?
So, yeah. So the question is, if you have an interpreter in your room, could you have the interpreter play the role of communication partner and you could be the prompter and then transition that? And my answer is absolutely. Either, and it could go either way. You can easily train a paraprofessional in your classroom to be the prompter. Or you can do the other way around. I would almost suggest that both of you play both of those roles, because you both need to be communication partners in that environment. And so absolutely, this is where you may have to rethink, how do I utilize all these adults in my classroom? Or unfortunately for some of you, the dwindling number of adults in your classrooms. Thank you, state of Illinois. But it becomes more difficult when you have less adults. But if you do have a second adult in your classroom, try to utilize that person at this phase. Make sense?
Okay, so we know she can
Successfully pick up pictures probably 100% of the time off the table. There's no resistance picking up a picture off the table, right? It's easy, it comes off. Once you add the component of Velcro, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And I know that sounds weird, but you know, you do have to pull. You might even have to hold on to the book to pick it up to get the picture off. So once the resistance comes in place, is it easier to reach across the table again and get the pretzel from me? Sometimes, yes, it is. So just adding the book in place, I'm still going to stay pretty close in case I need to redirect myself. But I'm still going to have the food here. We're still going to walk through. It's just one picture on the book.
Just the pretzel. Nothing else on this book. Just the pretzel at phase 1.
2.
Sorry, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. We've moved on to 2.
We fed her. She's downhill. So I'm going to have it here. So I may have to redirect. She's got it. But I may have to still have the open hand cue during that. We're still going to go through the process. The thing you're going to do here, though, is you want this picture to travel all over this book, okay? Because you don't want the student to end up with something called stimulus over selectivity, which they can get. So if you only always put the pretzel right here, then they're always going to go right there for the pretzel. And you may have a hard time moving through phase 3, which is discrimination, okay? So make sure it travels, all right? So she can easily get it off of the book. So then what I'm going to do is not stand in front of that, but I'm going to scooch back. So it's a little bit more difficult, and sometimes I will eat myself all the way through these sessions. So I like it when they like things that I like too. So I'll just sit and munch my way through these sessions. So again, she's hungry. It's right before lunch, right? So she has to get up. There you go. Come around the table so she can have her desired item. And then I'm going to do one of these. I'm going to move a little bit further. I'm going to, oh, do you want to, these are so good, yum. Yeah, oh, and oh, you want a pretzel? No, I'd never say you want a pretzel because kids are constantly prompted like that. I want a pretzel. And then we make the exchange. And then I'm possibly going to go ahead and move the book to a different location. I always reset the book myself. Okay, I never expect the child to reset it. So now she's going to the book and she's moving to me for this step. Okay, and we're having our exchange. Okay, At the end of the sessions, you can say, yes.
So when you're trying to extend your distance, how do you make sure the student stays focused on the picture exchange versus another stimuli in the room? Or like diverting their attention? Do you still have the prompter there?
No. At this point, there is no prompter. You're the only person. So past phase 1, you don't need a prompter.
So then, say you do step, 10 feet or so away, and you're working with a younger student who, how do you make sure they attend to the task versus...
Go slow. And your training, don't attend to another student during the training sessions. Okay, so when I'm training, I'm going to use, initially I'm going to use eye contact, okay, and then I'm not. I'm just going to use things like, eating out of the bag of pretzels, things like that. But initially I'll use eye contact, things like that to make sure. But during those training sessions, it is training only, so my attention won't divert to another student during that time. Now, if initially maybe I can only go like 2 feet away, 3 feet away, and then I'm going to do a slow distance away.
So you will know, just like we said, you'll know if you're fading your reinforcement too quickly, if the behavior stops. I've gone too far away from the student if now she could care less about pretzels, right? So you've got to stay close enough, and it's got to be a strong enough reinforcer for them to want to come to you to get it. So if I'm so far away from you that now you're distracted because you have new shoes on and they're awesome, so if I'm distracted by my shoes, then you just lost your training opportunity. You need to come closer so that they can see what you are enticing them with, and then slow, again, this is shaping. So always think shaping, and you'll know whether you need to get closer during this phase.
And that goes back to reinforcers. If you know you have a reinforcer that they will work for, not that they like, that they will work for, and you're not too far away too fast, they should continue.
You had a question.
That was kind of my question, was how do you make sure they don't run away? How do you, my youngest will, it's something she really wants to work for, she loves, but her impulsivity is, oh, well, you're far away, no one's watching, or they're far enough away they can't be within arm's length.
Yep.
I'm going to head for the door or the bathroom.
Always block the door. So, no.
Always block the door.
So when you're moving, you're moving toward the door. You are always in between the door and her. So think about that as one of your setups. Do you have that? Do you have something neatly blocking so they have to go around a little bit? Or is that fire code in your building? Because it was in mine, but you could always move it over if you needed to.
Yes and no. I mean, there's other adults, other students in the room, and she's fast.
Oh, yeah.
They always are. They're never slow.
They're never, ever slow.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We are going to move to phase 3, which is discrimination. So we have to make sure that the student can...
Hold on just a second. You need to move your mic over towards your mouth a little bit more. I'm not picking up on the mic right now. Are you guys? Okay.
I feel like I'm really connected right now. Can you hear me now?
Is that better?
You can?
Is that mic not on?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
She can never hear me. I'm beginning to think she's like my 21-year-old.
21.
Selective she is. Sorry, I'm not prepared. I apologize. I've been throwing things all over the ground. Okay, so phase 3 is discrimination. Who's that? This is all they had in the gift shop. Is there a plate back there? Can you grab me a plate? 2 plates? Yes.
They use edible items. There are some professionals, I think, some difficulty with it. What is your defense on?
My defense is, I don't care if anybody has an issue with it, it's what works for the kid. So if that is what they'll work for, then I'm going to use edibles all day long, because remember, we're on the landing coming out of the basement, right? Now, I'll also use activity reinforcers, but if it's not going to get me as far as a tropical Skittle, then for me, it's a no-brainer, right? I am using edibles only because I can break them in half and it's easier. But I've definitely used, I've published articles in which I've used bubbles. And that's easy. You know, you pop them out, you blow twice, you put the lid back on, and they re-request. I've done it using noise-making toys, where it starts and stops after about 15 seconds. I've done it where they've gotten to bounce like 4 times on a bouncy ball. 1, 2, 3, 4. Push it away, stand up, sit them back down. So I've done all kinds of types of reinforcers, but for the purpose of today, it's really easy for me to use edibles. But yeah, for me, it's really not about the adults in my environment at all.
No, I know. Yeah.
I'm the chair of my department. I have 22 faculty members. Definitely not about my adults.
You're a mess.
I'm a mess.
We're not allowed to give her anything, any candy or any sort of food at all anymore.
So the children don't eat at all?
We're not allowed to give them.
Oh, I can write anything into an IEP. If I need to write a behavioral plan, or where I'm teaching communication using behavioral components, I've written in all kinds of things into IEPs. So I would find out what those allergies are. I'm surely not going to throw anybody over the edge, you know, not knowing an allergy. I would never give a child something that, but I never have, I've been in the field for
Let me see your thingy.
years and years. I don't know which one it is.
I think it's this one. I don't know. So this is the #1 question that we get, because a lot of people have an internal issue with edibles, right? It is. It's the #1 question that we get. But we don't want to feed them all day long. But again, this goes back to do your preference assessment. And if you have kids, it all starts with your preference assessment.
That's it.
If you have students and they're going across the table and the only thing they'll go across the table for is food, you write it in. You write it into your BIP or you write it into your IEP. It has to be a highly reinforcing item. And if bubbles and Play-Doh aren't going to do it, you're not going to be able to train communication. So you do your preference assessment, and then you have data to prove why you have to use the things that your school tells you not to use. I think that this is probably one of the top 3 questions that we get every time we talk about PECS.
But I think too, something to remember is you're not giving them a huge whole pretzel every time they want one. She's breaking those into little pieces. So yes, you are giving them food. She's not going to give me the whole bag of Skittles. She's going to give me 1. And let me tell you, if
Maybe
she could cut
10.
that in half,
I
she
would.
would give me half. So yes, you're giving them edibles, but it's not you're not giving a ton of food or a ton of anything because you want to make it last as long as possible. You want to repeat that over and over and over.
Got a couple questions.
I know you have a couple questions, but you're also looking at someone who cans their own food and grows organically. So do you know how painful it was for me to buy these? This is not an easy process for me either. Is it, Borders?
No, it is not.
Yeah. So, yes.
I can't speak for everyone, but it's not my issue. It's the directors
I know.
putting this issue. So is there research or like, I don't know, something out there that we could present to them to say, this is why we need to use food?
I really think you go back to your preference assessment. You take data on student preferences. You use that PECS reinforcer data sheet that we gave you, and you show those administrators, hands down, the only thing this student is reaching for and going for are these 6 items. You want me to use these 10? They don't work. Here's my data. It's a hard, and I know it's not you all having that issue. It's a very top down, I get it. But you have to show the data about how you're making the decisions you're making. And once you show that, not many people will argue with it.
Well, and behavioral theory is based upon, some of the very first studies in behavioral theory are based upon it. Yeah. So yeah, reinforcement theory is based upon it. It started out with edibles and animals and then transitioned to humans. So, it truly is. Yeah.
So just from an administrator point of view, an IEP is need-based and data-driven. So when you present that to your administrator, you don't want to say, this is why I need to use food. You want to say, this is why I need to use the preferred or
reinforcement.
Reinforcers, the assessment indicates. Yeah. This is why we need food. This is why we need to use what the assessment indicates.
Right.
And then,
so that's good terminology.
Yes. And then show the assessment you're going to use ahead of time to the administrator. Have them look it over. If they've okayed that assessment to be used for your child, how can they deny the results?
Can you repeat that?
So.
And I don't know, we're not having this issue, but I have heard others talking about it.
Wait a second. They can't hear you. Could you
repeat it?
Yes, she's saying, speaking from an administrator's point of view, when you write it in based upon the data stating that this is why we need to use this type of reinforcement with this student, and this is the level that we're starting with, and that we need edibles are a part of this component.
So we need this assessment, or I guess you would want to present
our assessment.
This is why we need to use whatever the assessment indicates is the most preferred activity.
This is why we need to use whatever this assessment
says is the most preferred.
And to get that assessment approved by your administrator ahead of time.
And to get the assessment approved by the administrator ahead of time.
They can't argue with you afterwards if they approve the assessment.
Okay.
And then I think sometimes it may not be even your direct administrator that's in there that has the problem, but maybe somebody that's above them that is like trickling down these. And they're not the people that are there.
So it's people that aren't there that are making some decisions that may not understand. So many of us know that there is a hierarchy of reinforcers starting from primary going to secondary. And primary reinforcers are basically the things that meet a biological need, okay? So those are edibles, sleep, and sex. I don't think we want our kids having sex in school.
No.
Right?
No.
We really don't want them sleeping, but we can allow them to eat. And those are 3 things that everyone in here have a basic biological need for. And that's why oftentimes when we are working with students and we have to start at the ground up, we start at primary levels because those are the ones that have a basic biological need. We go from primary to secondary level. Secondary level reinforcers do not have a basic biological need. And those are things like activity reinforcement, social reinforcement, tangible reinforcement. Tangible would be like something like money, something that you get in exchange for something that you want. Okay, so there is a level, and oftentimes we have to start kids at primary so we can move them over into secondary. So, you know, oftentimes we don't want to keep them there for very long, but sometimes we have to start them there.
And if you consider the theory behind primary and secondary reinforcers, primary reinforcers don't have to be taught.
Nope. Basic
So,
biological need.
If you're looking at cognition, you have to be taught that a secondary reinforcer is reinforcing. You don't have to be taught that a primary reinforcer is reinforcing. It's a biological reinforcement. So we pair primary with secondary. That's like basic behavioral principle if you need to reference that. So
Sorry, probably a little bit more information than you wanted to know.
We like theory.
Okay, so let's look at discrimination. What she's doing at this point is we are using 2 pictures on our book at a time. We're using one, basically, that we know she wants to work for, and one that maybe she really isn't so overly excited about.
Right.
Do you have one over there?
Yeah, how about drink?
Or bubbles?
Bubbles. Yeah,
She doesn't like bubbles because they're sticky. Okay, so I make sure that I have those there. I put the communication book in front of her. I'm back at the table again, right? Because we're working on discrimination, and I have several things here. I'm never going to have a cluttery table, though. I'm probably going to have a chair next to me in which all this information, or all these items are going to be sitting on. It's not going to be on the table, because what happens when it's on the table? Yep, the child has them in their hand instantly, and the child's very distracted. So I'm going to allow her access to her communication book. This is at the point where we're going to try to figure out what symbol she needs. You can do whatever you want. Oh, and she wants bubbles. I want bubbles. And so I would take my pause, because we're signing with this group, and I would give her bubbles. But she doesn't really care for bubbles, right? Because she thinks they're sticky. But I would go ahead and give her some bubbles, right? I'd blow them, and she'd probably, ooh, why would I do that? She asked for it, right? But it also may have, and I would pair it. I would hold it up at the same time, so she could see it. So I know that she's going to begin to look at that picture, right? I'm going to replace these back on the book in the same order. No, I'm moving them around. Here we go again. Oh, pretzel. I want pretzel. There we go. So we're going to continue to do this, and I'm going to continue to collect data to see how well she's doing on this. And then I want to do, over some time, yes.
What do you do if you have a kid who just always goes to the right?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that. Every time goes to the right?
Yes.
Put everything on the left. Okay, is the child not crossing, is the child right-handed?
Yes.
Not crossing midline?
Not for pictures.
Okay. So, move the book, move everything over to the child's left-hand side to try to get the child to go ahead and move that direction, and see if you can get the child to go that direction. Even place the reinforcers on that child's side when you deliver. Okay? So now I want to see if she can discriminate. So I want to do a correspondence check. Okay? So what does the correspondence check look like? She is going to hand me a picture, right? So I actually, at this point, I'm going to have 2 things on that she prefers. She likes candy and she likes pretzels. And she is going to hand me one or the other. So you can choose which one you want. Oh, candy, I want candy. So I'm now going to hold up to see if she selects what? Candy. Candy, but I'm holding up 2 highly preferred items, right? Oh, she went for the pretzel. So what does this tell me? She's not discriminating at this point. So that correspondence check was a failure. So we know we still need to go back and work on our discrimination. Okay? So we need some more trials. This could also tell me that maybe the picture that I'm using is not going to be an acceptable symbol for her, right? I may need to use a picture of the bag. I may need to mount some actual objects onto my communication.
So, can I jump in?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is where we get to what Stacy was talking about earlier. I'm getting blinded. Sorry, walk with me.
Jeez.
Hand me something. I'm getting blinded.
Take it.
Here. Okay. This is where we enter level of abstraction. So some of you may have heard that terminology before related to reading. What is your student's level of abstraction? What is their level of abstract thinking? So if you start to do discrimination training and they're not successful, your data is showing over and over and over again that they are not able to discriminate. You're stuck at level 3. Now you need to back up. So everybody thinks PECS, board maker icons. Not always the best thing for your students. There's a difference. If you put out a black and white, you're only using black and white icons because we're poor, right? So we don't use color printing for anything. So we put black and white on there, nothing's happening even with their most favorite things in the whole entire world. So we add color, still not there. They still don't understand that this picture, right, this is just deaf kids, right? So the sign doesn't equal the object, doesn't equal the word kind of thing. That same thinking. Color icon doesn't work. Color icon doesn't work, move back to black and white photo. Black and white photo doesn't work, move back to color photo. Color photo doesn't work, move to objects. This is level of abstraction. And until you can get at where they cognitively understand that what you're asking them to exchange represents what they want to exchange for, you can't move forward. Again, we just moved back to the basement, but a whole other different basement. Okay? You have to get at the right level of abstraction. And this is where Stacy mentioned that we're in grant writing phase right now, and so we're replicating a PECS study for deaf kids with autism. The difference is we're looking at what modifications may be required for deaf kids with autism. Can they understand if you put a 2-dimensional picture of the sign that you've been signing on that PEC? Does that help? Perhaps that's where we start with deaf kids at phase 3. Start them with the icon with a little picture of the sign that you've been putting in their face. See, is that great for them? Can they understand with just the 2-dimensional, right? You can go up or you can go down in terms of level of abstraction, but you have to figure that out, and you can't figure that out until phase 3. So this is where you start to make those decisions. Make sense? Yes?
Did you ever use the child's picture in the icon, holding it so that they understand that it belongs to them?
Do you ever use a picture of the child in the icon so that
holding
like this.
the icon? Yeah.
Holding the icon?
Yeah.
I don't think I understand this question. Do I use a picture of the child holding the icon?
Instead of the icon, a picture of the child holding the icon.
Object.
Like real picture. They
the
see
real
themselves holding the Skittles.
Actually, no.
Okay.
Size would probably be
Size
the
is going to be
limitation.
an issue with that, because then you're going to have an icon that's this big, which is going to make it difficult when you need to move into 2 different objects. But the other thing is that you need them to know that candy is candy regardless of who's holding candy. And so if you have the actual object on there, that's even more concrete than a picture of themselves holding it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. Do we know? Click?
Click away.
Click, okay.
Okay, couple helpful hints. Don't forget to rearrange that picture icon to avoid that stimulus over selectivity. Add those non-preferred items to the board. What Kristi was saying about discrimination is incredibly important, and this happened to me, and it was just because I think we were lazy. We had some pictures of icons and we had some real pictures, and we were training a child, and we couldn't understand why the data would go from 30% one day to 90% the next to 100% back down to 20%. And we were like, what is going on? What is going on? And I felt bad, but we were using things like a brush as his non-preferred. He hated to have his hair brushed, so we'd be like, brush, and like brush it through his hair. He hated pickles, and we would offer him a pickle and things like that, because we wanted him to really pay attention. And it really ended up being our fault, because we were using real pictures, which he was responding to, and he had no clue what the line drawings were. And we just had to go back, and we literally were able to yellow highlight the real picture icons and recalculate the data to show that he got it every time we used a real picture of the item. And he had he understood 0 icons that were the black and white drawings. And so that was our fault. We can accidentally do things like that. Don't ever say no when they're discriminating. That's one thing we try to keep it positive in the environment, even if we put things on that they don't like. We never say no during any of the communication exchanges. We're always reinforcing, we're always delivering, even if it's something that they may not particularly prefer. Keep extra copies of everything, like 4 of them, 5 of them, because I don't know where they end up going, but they're never where they seem to need to be.
They're in my dryer.
They're attached to the inside of your winter coat. And then prepare a container to house supplies. I mean, most recently we used the backs of doors and just hung the sides of cabinets and just hung long strips and organized everything on those strips. So they're available and ready to go whenever the teacher needs them.
So be prepared to have something flung at you in phase 3. I always call it the hand and duck phase, because like we used to use prunes. Nobody likes prunes. I mean, when you're 12, you know, nobody likes prunes, but we would use prunes, and they would hand me the picture of a prune, and I would hand them a prune, and that would quickly get launched at my face, right? And so it is important that you choose some things that they don't like, and just be prepared that until they can discriminate, they are not going to like that you are handing them what they're asking for. So just be prepared for that, and then reset it and let them get what they want to get. But they have to go through non-examples to learn how to do it appropriately. So in that preference assessment, when you guys find preference assessments that you use, sometimes there are questions about things that they really don't like. That becomes just as important in the discrimination phase. What they don't like becomes an important component of this training. I'm going to flip you to 4.
Okay. We'll move on to 4, and then we're only going to 4 today. And basically the student is making a sentence strip at this point, creating, and then you add the sentence strip to the book. And beyond that, they can add attributes and so on. So as you see that, the I want is placed on there, and then you're adding more pictures to the front of the book. You're not necessarily adding pictures to the inside of the book yet, although you can begin, after this phase of sentence strip, begin making pages of items for reinforcers, or different items maybe on the playground that they like, or in gym that they like, or during playtime that they like, different items that they can request that can be organized. but she will begin creating or the sentence strip and handing the entire sentence strip. Now, as you can hear, this is removing very hard. Sorry. Oh, I broke it. Oh. No, I didn't. Couple words from the wise. This Velcro, be careful when you buy it. Sometimes the kind at Sam's is the really durable kind, and kids can't hardly manipulate it. I don't even know what brand it is, but it's in the same yellow box as the other kind is, except for it's super, super strong. So I don't even know what the name of it is, but I'm sure it has heavy duty on the label because
it's like commercial grade. It's
like commercial or something. It's very difficult to get off. So watch that because that's not a good one to buy for communication books.
And at this phase, they would bring this to the communication partner and you're going to train them to point. Or in our case, to I want cookies, right? You're going to start to train syntax at this point. Is where syntax comes in, is at phase 4. So, okay. Oh, sorry. This is nonverbal.
Are you training them to sign it using the symbol or the actual picture of the sign?
I would pair them if their level of abstraction allows them to discriminate with the picture of the sign on the icon. Some kids, the icon, and if you all have used BoardMaker before, some of the BoardMaker symbols are just the two-dimensional sign. And so if they're at that level of abstraction, wonderful. You can use that. But oftentimes that's a higher level of cognition to understand that the sign equals the object. And so again, it's going to come down to level of abstraction. One of the things about this phase is you can't move on to phase 4 until they have about 12 to 20 items that they can discriminate. So you're going to be working on vocabulary and discrimination a lot before you can move on to phase 4. Once they've got consistent vocabulary, then you can move on. They've been able to tell you that they like bubbles, and they like to swing, and they like to bounce, and all these different things. They can discriminate them all. Then you can move on to sentences. And then once they are able to do that on the cover of their book, then you start to see things like colored pages on the inside. Like red is playground stuff, and blue is art, or whatever you're going to do. You're going to start to see them be able to go inside their book to be able to find their items.
I think the good thing is that once they get past phase 3, they know that they have to look. And so those pictures, the symbols begin to grow pretty rapidly. It's not that they have to sit. It doesn't take a long time to train and retrain and retrain. It's like all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, that looks different. Oh, I've got it. And then all of a sudden they know. And they begin to pick that up. And they begin to pick up other symbols in the environment as well.
This is, whenever they get to this phase, is also where I started to be able to use this in my academics. So when we're doing interactive story time, so now they can look, right? So we're doing the mitten or whatever, because it's winter, right? If somebody's teaching the mitten. And so you're doing the mitten, and they're going to come and they're going to put that animal on the gigantic thing that you spent your summer making, right? But at this point, they can look and discriminate. So now, even though that's not a highly preferred item, they can now look and use that on your choice board, and they're able to request, I want the rabbit. And then they're going to come and put their, and so at this stage is where they've been able to look, and now they start to make those connections across to content, is what I typically found. By the time you got them to 12 to 20 words that they could discriminate, now I could more easily start to embed this within my instruction and not specific PECS training sessions. Up until this point, it's been find time to do 10 trials with your kid during the day. One-on-one. Once you get to this point, you can start to embed this throughout the day. Embed it within their dorm life. Embed it in different areas, because now they understand how to communicate. Hence why this is functional communication. Now they know how to be functional with it. Yes, ma'am?
At what point do you include the written or printed word?
Always.
At what point do you just have the item or the photograph? How do you make that communication?
Always. Always include.
Put the written in.
Okay, so the question is, when do you start to put the written word in? Stacy immediately started to say always, always, except if you're using a different level of abstraction. If you're using object or photo, when do you start to tie that in?
Well, object, possibly not.
Right.
I would probably just use the object, but anytime I'm using a photo, icon, anything, I'm always including print. Always. So you just don't know when students are picking it up. Always.
When do you
Yeah.
move to the phrase level?
When they're building.
When do you move to phrase is at level 4.
Yeah. And no, okay, so we've talked a lot about functional communication. Where do you jump off? Where does it become something else? Where do you begin pairing? So all along you've been pairing sign, right? So hopefully they're using some of these signs functionally as well. So you can begin to build on those. So you have to know when you can leap to something else. Do you leap to sign only because now they get the symbolic, they get the language, they get the functionality of that? Do you leap to an iPad so they're understood by others in the environment? What do you leap to? You have to understand that there's always something else. You also can stay low tech. I mean, because it's very easy for the world around them to understand pictures. So you always have to figure out as a team, what is the next step? Where am I going next?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, questions on PECS. Okay, that's one, and the, oh, sorry, yes.
When do you start, do you do in phase 3 or phase 4 when you start having more than just 2 choices, where you have like maybe 3 or 4 choices for the pick? Do you do that phase 3 or phase 4?
Phase 3, you can add in more, where there's going to be multiple pictures on the cover of their book. Once they can discriminate 2 and they can discriminate across different things, they can get 5 to 10 items that are paired in different pairings. Then you can add a 3rd picture and then move them always and make sure that they're not just selecting. I think you guys probably remember I had a student who always went bottom right, bottom right, bottom right, bottom right. So you move everything around until they can figure out how to do that. I had that exact same case, bottom right only, and so we had to work on moving everything around that book for a while before she would actually look and actually discriminate what she was choosing. And that's what you want to get to in stage 3. Stage 4 is when you're able to move into, now I can say rather than one word, I want this. So, okay? Yes?
What do you have research on, like, you get this going in your 10 reps at school and the kid goes home and gets 50 pretzels because they screamed and kicked, and then they come back the next day and they're like, I'm not doing this because I can hit scream and kick and get 50 pretzels at home. Like, what if you're not getting some support at home?
Okay, so what if you're not getting support at home? You want the child to ask for pretzels. They maybe do it for you at school, but then they go home and they get pretzels because mom was avoiding the tantrum or something like that. What do? And part of that would be changing your reinforcement out a lot. Is going to be part of that.
Your reinforcer's just been bootlegged.
Yeah, especially if, and that's why Stacy said earlier, don't use reinforcers that mom and dad need to use at home. It is so important that some reinforcers, sometimes your strongest reinforcers, are reserved for mom and dad. And I know that that sucks because you want to use the best one because it's a long day for you. It's not nearly as long for you as it is for mom and dad. They need the strongest reinforcers. There are also some reinforcers. I had a kid whose strongest reinforcement was swimming. Well, I'm not taking you swimming, right? We're at school. I can't take you swimming. I'm not going to use that. Mom and Dad got to use that all the time. Good for them. I didn't get to use that. Every kid is going to have more than one reinforcer. And it's very important to rotate those and use those in a different way. And it's hard when you don't get support at home, and all you can do is what we do every day and ask to continue that communication with mom and dad, continue communication with dorm parents, continue to try and get everyone on the same page. We know what's going to happen if it's not there, right? Progress is going to be much slower. Progress could still happen. Remember, it takes 80 to 90 probably trials for a child with autism and deafness to learn a skill. So you're looking at 90 trials minimally to learn something, and then they go home and then it gets reinforced, and so now you've been backed up again. So this explains our slow trajectory of change. Okay, so these two are gonna pack up and move out, so you're stuck with me for just a little longer. Your books, I just wanted to make sure everybody got a book. The book that you all were given today is about visual strategies that you can use for communication. Part of this is also, and Stacy hit on this a little earlier, is looking at physical structure and how you can visually support your environment. So if you have kids that like to run away from circle time, what are some things that you could do? We're away from PECS and functional communication for a moment. What can you put in place to show a kid you don't want them to run away? What would you do? Yes? Like a picture with the red circle and the line. Good. With their feet. So don't walk over here. What else have you used in your classrooms? Leah? Stop signs. Stop signs. Fabulous. So stop signs are a pretty universal picture to use. Also things like tape on the floor, right? Tape on the floor, physically blocking with bookshelves, different blocking of your environment. That's a visual support. And I know it doesn't seem like that's a visual support, but one of the things I want you guys to think about now, we asked you earlier to think about your students that you're concerned about. When are behaviors getting in the way? What are they communicating through their behavior? So if they're communicating, get me the heck out of Dodge, then we need to put some visuals and visual supports in place for them. Not only do we need to teach them functional communication skills, but we also need to make their environment, make it very clear what our expectations are. And we can do that by physically arranging our classroom or using visuals like the stop sign. You all have probably seen or heard of TEACH, correct? Structured teaching. TEACCH, is that right? CCH? It's out of North Carolina. And it is a system for structuring your teaching. It involves work systems like we talked about last year. It also talks about physically setting up your classroom. So we did pull some pictures up here. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a classroom that we got to go into. Probably we're the only people on the planet that looked forward to going into this classroom every week, but very, very complex. 5 kids, all deaf-blind, all very behavioral, very little communication happening. When we got to the first classroom, it's one of those things where they put you in a classroom, you don't have any choice, right? The classroom had 3 walls. It was in one of those 1972 open concept wings. You guys remember those? There wasn't a 4th wall. So it's like 3 walls, and then we're all in this big round together, which is just the best classroom ever to put deaf kids in. Right? Wow, this is great. Thanks for that. So the teacher did her best. She created a 4th wall using things like cabinets or whatever she could use. But in this little space she had, once you made it into this, past the built fake 4th wall, There was a table and some center time stuff, and everything was still very open. What happened in that was that kids were running. They had no idea what they were supposed to do in different areas of the room. They couldn't physically understand or cognitively understand what is my expected behavior when I'm here in this room versus when I'm here in this room. So there are some visual supports you can put in place. Stacy talked about this area a little bit earlier. So this is the independent workstation area. You can see the finish baskets. Makes it very clear when you're here, you're working. Here's your desk. Here's your finish basket. There's something else very important about this picture. What do you see on that bookshelf? Nothing. Excellent. You see nothing. That is intentional. We covered every bookshelf with black fabric. Why? Right, to stop the distractions, right? They wanted to get in there, they were just distracted, and they were very impulsive kids. And so we needed to block that right away. It's time for work, you're gonna work here. So we didn't have to use language here. We didn't have to say, don't touch. That environment very clearly says, don't touch. So that is just one example of visual support. She showed you this picture. This is the large group area and the small group area. Here is what she was just talking about. This is our system for organizing the pictures that we used in this environment. You guys probably can't tell from this picture, how big do you think our pictures are in this room? They're big, right? They're not these little 1 by 1 inch stuff. Why? Because every student in this classroom was deaf-blind. They all had a visual component. Talk about a struggle for me. Like, this was a whole new ball game for me, guys. I had no idea. So I had to work with, well, Kristi Probst, who said these icons have to be at least 3 by 5. So postcard size, right? They have to be 3 by 5. They have to have stark contrast. We have to use different things for student A than student B. We had a student who was completely reliant on tactile cues. So all of hers had to have a special symbol added to them. And so there can be different levels that have to happen here. You all, I want you to notice this is very easy. Yellow, orange, blue, I don't know what color that is, pink maybe. Those colors, consistent in the classroom always. So Ethan knew that he was always orange. Did Ethan know where his stuff was before we made it into this classroom? No. Ethan had no idea where he was supposed to go when he came into the classroom because every day the paraprofessional took him into the classroom and put him where he was going to go. No, our goal is independence. So we put everything for Ethan is now the same. Every color, every hook where he hangs his backpack, every weight chair, we have weight chairs in this classroom. We have visual schedules in this classroom. We know which one is Ethan's, right? Does Ethan have to read his name to know where to go? No, it became very easy. We also chose, you see the white Velcro versus the black Velcro? Totally a decision made only based on visual acuity. If you're going to use orange, it has to be contrasted with black. If you're going to use blue, it has to be contrasted with white. And so lots of decision making that went into this. This poor teacher, bless her heart, it was her first year and she adopted the hardest classroom in the history of mankind. I kept telling her, it's okay. Anyone would struggle with this classroom. It's very, very difficult. But our first goal was to visually show these kids our expectations. Here's something that I love. This is my favorite thing for compliance training. What are these? Yeah, chairs.
Color-coded chairs.
Color-coded chairs. Who knows what kinds of chairs these are? Weight chairs. Weight chairs. Have you guys ever heard of weight chairs? Best thing ever invented for every parent on the planet. If you have a child that's nonverbal or low language, do you think they wait when mom goes to the bank, or in line at Walmart, or at the doctor's office, or when they go to the audiologist, right? Is wait an important life concept?
People are having an aha that you mean wait.
Wait. Don't, like, I wore my stripes the wrong direction. Yes, not wait. Wait. Weight chairs. This is taught within a schedule. This is the picture on their visual schedule. This. Does Ethan know what chair to go to? Yeah, everybody knows that's my chair, right? And we do compliance training, like Stacy talked about earlier, where when we first train weight chairs, how long do they sit in their weight chairs? 3 seconds. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, and then woo, we're done. Time to check your schedule, moving on. And then we increase the time in weight chairs. This serves multiple purposes. Can you imagine as a teacher if your children could go and sit in these chairs even for a minute and a half so you can pull out paint and get your stuff ready before you transition them to the art center? It is life-changing. This is probably one of my favorite interventions that I learned about when I taught at the autism clinic in Cincinnati. We decided every kid will learn to wait. It's good for us as teachers. It's a very important life skill, and it was life-changing for these parents every single day. So just a very, not easy, because you're going to have to do compliance training for all of it, but it's visually clear. What else is important about where you place this in your classrooms? Where are you going to put your weight chairs?
Not by the door.
Not by the door. Not by the door at all, right? Away from any eloping opportunity is very, very important. Away from areas where it's aversive, right? Away from one-on-one workspace, because nobody likes to go there. Let's just be honest, right? And here's another thing that I want you to think about. When you're thinking about your classroom setup, these are the areas that we had in this classroom. One-on-one. How many of you have one-on-one work time scheduled in every day for every one of your students? Okay, I might cry a little bit, but that's okay. One-on-one workspace we had in this classroom. This is where this student is going to come and work with me. I'm your teacher. We're going to work here, one-on-one time. We have independent work time, where they're going to sit down with their tasks. They're all independent. We have large group time, we have a circle time, we have a play area, and we have weight chairs. Do you think this teacher knew how to set up the schedule to rotate kids through that? No. Visual schedules became important in two different ways. One, it let the teachers know what the heck they're doing, right? Because there's many transitions. Two is it lets the kids know where to go. You will see, do you see the four little Velcro squares? I'm hoping that in another picture you can actually see, let me see, right, these didn't have see right here, there's a big picture, and then there's Velcro underneath it. Those are one-to-one matching. So they take this picture, that's actually the picture for workspace. They take their picture off their icon or off their schedule. Now, every one of those pieces of Velcro is surrounded by a color, because the teacher was like, whoa, they don't know which one is theirs. So when they're done, they don't know which picture to grab to go put back in the finished thing. So Ethan has one that's covered in orange. The student has one in pink.
If they can't discriminate color because of their vision, can you do it with texture?
We absolutely do. Thank you for saying that. Yes, if they cannot discriminate color, absolutely the case in this room. We have a little girl, well, not very little, but There's a girl that got added to this classroom who cannot discriminate color in any way. So every one of her icons matches a tactile cue that is on that big picture now. She came after we took the pictures when we originally changed this classroom. So those are just some examples of ways that you can visually support your students through their day. Do you guys think, just given the description of the classroom before we went in and pictures of this classroom now, do you think student behavior changed? Quickly or slowly? Quickly. Very quickly. Very quickly. They knew where they were supposed to be and when. Is it 100%? Absolutely not. But we have things in the lineup at the door. Guess what? 4 different colored squares. This is where you stand, and it's far enough away so I'm not punching the kid in front of me, right? I mean, visual supports seem so simple, but really helps them be independent in their classroom time. So, do you have the time? 2:15. Perfect. So it's almost time for the end of this. So this is what I have if anybody wants to. I have PECS books up here. I have laptops and printers. If anyone would like to print some visual supports for your students to take back and try in your classrooms. The other piece is that I will be here for a little while longer if you want to think through some ideas for your students. In the meantime, I guess now is the right time for me to field questions. Yes, ma'am.
In this particular room, or
Yes.
in this setting, what, did everyone move at the same time, and what was the impetus to move to a new area?
Thank you. So when do we move? Does everyone move at the same time? Part of the #1 recommendation we brought to this classroom, these are little people, and they're 5 and 6, and not the littlest, but little people who could probably only attend for about a minute and a half each. And the schedule when we got there was very typical of a kindergarten classroom. So the teacher thought, well, we're going to have 20 minutes of story time, and then we're going to have 30 minutes of circle, and then we're going to do 20 minutes of art. And I wanted to say, oh, honey, you're not doing 20 minutes of anything, right? You're going to have behavior out the wazoo because they can't attend for this long. I have behavior after 20 minutes of art time, right? I can't attend that long. So what we did was we told her, you have to transition no longer than every 7 minutes in this classroom. 7 minutes tops. If your kids are in a center in your room for longer than 7 minutes, you might as well just turn on the behavior light because they're gonna have behavior. So we instantly changed her schedule. That was a big transition to go from typical classroom, what I think of as a kindergarten teacher, to I have to transition every 7 minutes. What we did for that classroom is we said just transition them every 7 minutes. So we used a visual timer, and when there were visual timers, there were lots of adults in this classroom. Set the visual timer at 8 minutes, we point, it's all done, then we move on. Okay, so that's definitely something that we did. If students finished early, independent work time. Tasks in independent work have to be independent. So they may move through their tasks quicker than 7 minutes. So in that case, then there's a wait chair sign for them, and then they wait. What else do I have in the wait chair area?
A task or a fidget.
A task or a fidget, yeah. We had all kinds of fidgets. Sometimes they were in a basket underneath their chairs that they could fidget with. It's appropriate to fidget when you're waiting. If you've been to Disney World lately, you better bring fidgets, right? So it's appropriate to have fidgets in your wait area. So that's one of the things that we did. But I absolutely would cue them with a light, cue them with a visual timer, have them transition frequently in the classroom all together. Because if you only have one person transitioning, then everybody is way off on their schedule. Somebody, yes?
Kind of a broad question.
Yeah.
But what does this mean, or how would this apply to what we've kind of covered to those of us that we're itinerants and our kids are implanted but, profoundly deaf? and we have to provide our services for a short period of time within an autism program. So we aren't their lead teacher all the time. They're receiving our services, you know, proportions of the day.
So
the structure of an autism program.
So you're an itinerant and you're going in to provide services in an autism classroom.
Like
Does
math
it,
instruction, reading instruction.
oh boy, that's a great job you have. Your job is to go in and teach reading instruction in an autism classroom.
To the
deaf child, DWD child. So my question, I think that this came up at lunch, Stacy said, well, how do they meet the deaf needs? Was that your all's question?
I talked to Stacy at lunch.
Yes, you must have talked to Stacy at lunch. So she said they want to know, are they giving enough of the deaf piece to the programming, right? Because you're an itinerant. And your job as an itinerant is very complicated. I've worked it for years. Your job in that specific role is to train that LBS instructor what you need them to do relative to the hearing piece. My biggest question to you all at that table right now is what's missing from the programming? So if you go in and you see there are visuals in place, they're teaching communication, what's missing? And if it's a deaf piece, if it's a acoustics piece, if it's a amplification issue, and whatever is you feel like is missing, I'm guessing is related to the deafness piece, that's what you're going to train those LBS teachers on, because you're only going to be flipping in there an hour every couple days, right? And so my biggest question to you all would be, what's missing? 2 hours every day. Oh, well, I would say, give me a workspace. Give me that one-on-one workspace. Are you push-in? Are there other kids in the classroom?
Push-in. There's other kids in the classroom, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
the stations that you've got, the independent work, the direct instruction.
they're doing that when you're in there, correct? So yeah, I would absolutely have that kid stay on that schedule. What happens if they pull that kid off that schedule? Nightmare, right? They need to stay on their visual schedule for the day. So if on the days that, well, you're there every day, which is good. It's good that you're there every day. But I would, if the class is transitioning every 7 minutes, that kid is transitioning every 7 minutes. And what you're doing is embedding language, just like any itinerant does, into whatever activity they're expected to do. So independent workstation, they're working independently. Can you give advice to the LBS instructor on what are appropriate independent tasks for this child to work on? Those kinds of questions would be how I would view an important itinerant role. So hey, you know what? They've already done one-to-one matching, so let's move on to vocabulary. We know that that's a major deficit area. And then have them start to train that in one-on-one. One-on-one time during your 2 hours there needs to be with you. Focused in on language and communication goals. Does the teacher say no?
No, not no. But right now, behavior-wise, it's a lot more effective. And physical space-wise,
physical space is always
push
difficult.
into the rotations rather than pull out of those rotations. So independent work, I actually don't make it independent in the afternoon. I use that as a language instruction time.
Perfect.
Tasks that are in the independent.
They should be doing independent tasks multiple times a day. So if they lose one of them because you're there, I would say that that'd be absolutely fine. Push in is important, and I think one of the questions, I wish there was a recipe answer for this, but one of the things I would say is see how you can embed language within the time that you're there. Just like an itinerant would if they were going into a typical second grade classroom with a kid with an implant. What's your role as an itinerant? To push as much language into that as possible and to model for the teacher what are your expectations for language and listening. I know, I can give that answer standing here. I don't get punched in the face every day. So we can talk. It's good stuff. Yes?
I just wanted to make a comment that it was really kudos to that new teacher to work with you and it sounds like you do a really good job in that classroom. I know as you put your administrator hat on, or I put mine on, sometimes teachers get worried when you're looking at the evaluation tool, because there's 21, 22 components, and you know, all of us want to do a really, really good job, but now we have these students, and how do we empower students to make decisions in the classroom and to take control over their behavior? But it looks like that really happened in that classroom, that the students were able to find the chairs on their own. And now that teacher was empowering the students to do that and not be led with the one-to-one. And so it's just really important for teachers to remember to be, when you look at that tool, think about what your goal is for those students and how can you empower students to be independent. So it's not going to look like a kindergarten room or a first grade room or a second grade room where a student is saying, hey, you know, we decided that we were going to take turns when we talk. That's not going to happen in a classroom like yours.
Right.
But these kids absolutely can pick their own chair, or they can pick a fidget tool up when they know that it's almost time has run out and the weight chair is almost time, and they're going to move and change to a different activity. That's really empowering the students. And it's up to, I think, the teachers to find that documentation and make sure they talk about it in their pre-conference. Make sure that they see that in the observation and talk about it in the post-conference too.
Okay, so I can't even repeat what she just said. A bunch of teacher evaluation stuff. Right? That was teacher evaluation tool that you were speaking to, and how you can use some of these things to really illustrate how you can work on student empowerment and student independence within your classroom, even if it has kind of a different look. And I'll say this, guys, I train teachers of the deaf every day. We don't train teachers of the deaf to do this, right? And so it is teaching a new way of thinking about things. And so yes, kudos to the first year teacher who let me go in there and be the crazy lady that I am every day. So other questions? Because I know that it's getting close to time to go. Yes?
Okay, I thought this session was really good. I was just thinking about one thing. How does this apply to me as a therapist?
Can I ask which kind of therapy?
Mental health.
Mental health. So I think that no matter what kind of therapy you are in with a student, something like staying in the area and compliance becomes something that's very important. But also, how can you use alternate forms of communication, similar to functional communication training, for a student to eventually express mental health concerns or issues. At the beginning, what's coming out is lots of behavior, and your job is to interpret what is that behavior? What is that behavior trying to tell me? And it becomes difficult when there's additional mental health issues happening. But if you can eventually build communication in, then you're going to build to more abstract communication, which is going to eventually lead to what you need to get at in your therapeutic setting. Would you agree with that kind of discussion?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Perfect. Other questions, comments? Have a good afternoon.